love football and you want to play professionally and impress people, even maybe fans, friends, family, but if you don't understand these 4 truths I'm about to provide for you right now, then your dream of going pro could easily be in danger. All right, so let's get right into it. Number 1, all right, I'm about to reality check you guys. All right, so first thing is, all right, you guys have probably heard this before. This is not to discourage you, but in case you don't know and in case you need reminding, all right, statistically, all right, there's already a low chance you're going to go pro. All right, you're going to make it pro. All right, now, no one's saying you can't. No one's saying you can't be positive. No one's saying you can't be the 1% of people who actually goes pro, because that's actually the stats, right? Less than 1% of people, especially if you're in like third world country or a country who doesn't have a lot of opportunities, right? Like it's lower demographic and stuff like that. You're even less likely to go pro. That's the reality, right? So, just in case you're not fully aware of the stats, that's the reality, right? But that doesn't mean you can't make it. This is just a reality check. Another thing too is there's a lot of talent around you. Okay, so just because, let's say, you're even good enough, right? You can play football, you're good, right? There's a reason why there are like numerous football leagues around the world. All right, so obviously the most famous ones: Premier League, La Liga, Serie A. These are like the top 5 leagues, right? But there are also other leagues. There are probably even like professional football leagues in your country too that you've never even heard about. But the reason why there are leagues like that, because there's literally a lot of talent everywhere, and not everyone is going to be able to make it to the top. All right, there's just no room, right? So some players are very good, right? But either people don't see their talents enough where they get that exposure enough to go pro, or like they're content enough with just where they are and they just stay where they are. So you have to be aware that there's a lot of talent around you, and therefore just because you're talented doesn't mean you're necessarily going to succeed, right? And it's also, just because you're talented and like, okay, you can play football decently, you're a good player, that also doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to like stand out above the rest of your peers, if you know what I'm saying, right? And that's the reality, right? So you have to be aware that there's a talent overload with soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. That means, you have to be realistic about your chances, right? Okay, now there's also a misconception about talent and success. Okay, like I alluded to this earlier, right? But just because you're talented doesn't mean you're going to be successful, right? So don't just because, okay, let's say you're one of those guys who your friends applaud you all the time, like, yo, you're so good. Like, honestly, every coach should be playing you fully 90 minutes, or like, like you're literally the best player, or like, guy, have you ever considered going pro, or like, yo, do you play pro already, or like, yo, have you been scouted? Like, do you know what I'm saying? All these sorts of comments where you feel like you're already talented, which means you can succeed at any time, doesn't mean that does not equate, right? It doesn't make any sense. A lot of like processes, right, that can influence your success, luck, you knowing the right people, things of that nature, right? So generally speaking, right, like you have to be aware that talent and success does not equate, right? So keep that in mind, so that realistically you're like, okay, fine, what else can I do? What else can I do? Can I do this? Can I do that? Because like, guys, if you're not fully aware of the situation, if you don't understand the situation fully, like imagine you trying to achieve a goal, because your goal is to go pro. Imagine you trying to achieve your goal and you don't even fully understand your situation, right? The realities of your situation. If you don't understand the situation fully, how can you properly take the right steps in order to avoid the necessary obstacles that can come your way? Right, you're not going to see the obstacles that will come your way if you're not fully aware of the situation. You're just dreaming, you're hoping, right? And you fall into this trap of propaganda of where, if you're good enough, some scouts may be watching in the stands and may say, oh, I like this player, let's take him to the Premier League. That sort of dream, fairy tale bullshit a lot of young kids dream. That's not going to happen, right? I'm sorry to break it down for you like this. I'm sorry that I'm being a little bit harsh, and you feel a little bit butthurt, but that's the reality, right? So if you feel butthurt and you can't handle this, click off the video. There's no point watching the rest of the video, because this is harsh truths, right? So, okay, another thing with the reality check, is your external factors. Again, I talked about this a little bit, but your external factors, your environment, the things happening around you. Like I said, if you're in a third world country versus if you're in a first world country, right? the opportunities for you to go pro are it's different, right? If you're in the first world country, obviously, let's say you're in the UK compared to Nigeria, right? I'm from Nigeria, right? But let's say someone's in the UK and someone's in Nigeria, right? Obviously, someone in the UK will have way more opportunities. The UK literally has the Premier League, literally has more scouts, you know, scouts obviously around that area, you know, even though there's a lot of talent there, at least there's more opportunities, right? Whereas Nigeria, you know, not every scout is going to go to a third world country. Nigeria can be dangerous for some people, you know, and it's things of that nature, right? So it's just about like understanding the impact of your environment, the external factor. That does not mean someone from Nigeria cannot go pro. Keep in mind, like we've had lots of Nigerians who have gone pro. Mikel Obi, Osimhen, people like that, right? Lots of Africans in the same situation. People like Drogba outside, you know, Cote d'Ivoire, you know, like people all around Africa have gone pro. They've made a legacy for themselves. So that does not mean you can't, right? I'm just saying, you know, if your dreams to go pro, you need to be aware of like the obstacles and things that could come your way, right? So speaking of obstacles, right, that's my point, but that's my second point, right, is understanding things like, okay, let's say, okay, now we talked about the first point, the reality check, right, the stats, the probability, whatever. Okay, now the obstacles. Let's even say you're in a first world country, right? Now this can happen in a third world country still, or a developing country or whatnot, you know, but that's not like, but let's just say you're in a first world country, for instance, right, and you have opportunities. For example, I'm in Canada, right, so I wanted to go pro, right, so I've had more opportunities than let's say if I was still in Nigeria, right? But even let's say you're playing for a team and whatnot, things like soccer politics can instantly, right, can affect your progress into going professional. Why? Because at the end of the day, like, let's say, because you know what you have to understand is that a lot of coaches are underpaid, right? They're volunteering, you know, and you know, like they have a second job, so this coaching gig is not their main source of income, right? So even though they're invested in it and they're helping the players, right, at the end of the day, they're not obligated. It's not like their job is on the line. It's not like a manager in professionals, let's say Jose Mourinho, who has to like obviously play the best team possible for him to win. No, all right, this coaches, this, you know, the coaches that are helping you with the soccer team and whatnot right now, whatever level you're playing, you know, they're more just like, okay, you know, obviously I want to play the best team for me to win, but I also don't need to put up with bullshit from any player. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? Like, I don't care if you're a good player or whatnot. Like, if you're acting like some kind of sport brat, or you're doing this, you're undisciplined, you're doing that, you're affecting my coaching regime that I'm trying to implement on the players, the team atmosphere, whatnot, you know, I'm not gonna play you. You know, that's politics right there. You know, sometimes it's not even that they don't like you. It could be the fact that, you know, let's say you've been playing well for the team and whatnot. The coach kind of likes you or whatnot, but then another coach brings in a new player and then tells him, yo, this guy's very good, blah, blah, blah. You should be playing him, you know, or maybe that player's dad maybe owns the club, right? And he's like, yo, my son has to be playing every game, you know, things like that, right? The coach doesn't really have a choice, or the coach will just rather play politics, you know, it's things like that, you know, like there's some things that are outside of your control is what I'm trying to say. Some things that are outside of your control, and you need to be able to like understand that soccer politics can easily affect how you essentially play the game and your goal to go pro, right? And so another thing too is also economic constraints of clubs, right? So let's say you're making it semi-pro, or, you know, it doesn't have to even be semi-pro, right? But some clubs don't have the money to be able to like travel distances, right? Because here's another thing, right? If you're playing for a club, obviously you're getting seen more, right? People get to see you play more, which is very important because you never know who's watching. Like I told you before, just because it's 1%, that doesn't mean you can't be in the 1%, right? I'm not saying it's impossible to get scouted. I'm just saying it's unlikely, right? But that does not mean you can't be scouted, which is why, you know, when you're playing for a club, you know, it's very important that you're playing, right? And so that people can see your ability on the field and be like, oh yeah, this guy's good. Because if they know you're good, maybe a scout is watching one day and like, yeah, you know, or the right person may know the right person, or may not know the right person just because they like you. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's things like that, right? But if your club doesn't have the money to be able to like travel games or whatnot, because that's the reality, right? Like if you're going to play different teams around your area, you have to be able to travel games and stuff like that, right? And if your club doesn't have the ability to be able to like orchestrate the fixtures or like orchestrate team jerseys and things like that, this can easily affect your ability to be able to level up going pro, because the opportunities are being hindered because of your club, right? So you have to look at it like, is my club in that sort of situation? This happens mostly in third world countries, like I doubt I'll see that in like Canada. I don't say in Canada, but in Nigeria, all they may afford is really jerseys, right? Like the games have to be probably around not too far from you, but like you can't be traveling far. Like in Canada, you can travel outside of the city you're in just to play a game, so it's very different. So look at the economic constraints of your club and understand if it's possible or not, right? There are also things like cultural biases, right? So the fact is, hey man, guys, to break it down to you, man, there's still things like racism in this world, right? Like it's not even just racism per se, like, oh, because he's black he's not gonna play, or because he's Indian he's not gonna play, or whatever. It's just more like, there's a culture also. For example, let's say a coach is Spanish, for instance, right? If there's another Spanish player, or if there's like someone who speaks the language or things like that, like there's just more like bias, like, oh yeah, I feel like this guy, I'm able to like communicate more effectively with him, or like I feel like because of his background, maybe he understands the style of play a little bit more that I want to play, but yeah, it's like there's some things you literally cannot control. These are the unseen obstacles I'm trying to bring to light for you guys, right? Because there's just some things like, you think life is not fair, right? You think everything is just based on merit sometimes. Like that's how I used to think when I was younger, at least, right? Like if you work hard enough, it should be based on merit, right? If someone is being picked over me, it's because they did more work than me or whatnot. Sometimes that's not the case. It's just bias from different angles, and it could literally be the stupidest thing, like your culture, right? But it doesn't matter, because you're not the one in charge of the positions, right? The picking and stuff like that. And you have to be aware of this thing so that you can, okay, how do I put myself in a better position, or how do I overcome this challenge, And I talk about some of these in my previous videos, so feel free to check it out, And okay, and again, things like media and public perception, right? So guys, what you don't understand is, I also talk about this in my previous videos as well, right? But also controlling social media can also help you, go pro, right? So if you're not using any media whatsoever, you're already like setting an obstacle for yourself, right? Because you already know technology is growing today. Social media is growing, especially, right? You've seen TikTok rise. There are going to be other platforms that will rise. And if you're not like making yourself a presence over there, right? Making yourself, like kind of known in that area of you playing football and whatnot, then you're going to struggle a little. Right now, no one's saying you need to get millions of views to be able to go pro, whatnot. Just put yourself out there first. If you happen to get those millions of views and get eyes on you through social media and not through playing, right, you already have an advantage over other people, right? And you can just leverage that, maybe show your soccer resume online or things like that, so that people who actually watch football could say, oh, who is this guy? Let me get in contact with him. Let me see what he's about. Maybe he'll be interested in playing for my club. You never know, right? But a lot of guys don't leverage social media. Like I even talked to some of my clients and they're like, yo, I don't have social media. I don't have Instagram. I don't have this. I'm like, what? How does you have Instagram? It's crazy, right? So, you need to start getting on that, right? Start leveraging it in a way. You never know where that takes you. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. Because you have to train, you have to play for teams, you have to do social media, you have to analyze, oh, does this coach like me, blah, blah, blah. But like, guys, if you don't put in the work, if you're not taking the time to like understand things, and it's not even a lot of work when you understand that, like, yo, this is my dream, all right, I'm passionate about it, so I have to dial in, and that's just the fact, right? You need to be able to like, okay, I'm going to focus on my dream, right? So I'm going to do what I have to do to get it done, right? And social media is also a big part of it, right? So guys, make sure you're controlling that social media aspect, and don't let it be an obstacle, like when it can be an advantage for you, right? So guys, number 3, right, mentorship and guidance, right? So the simple fact is, having the right mentor can take you places, right? So you can't do it alone. All right, I've talked about this in my previous videos as well a bit, but I'm just mentioning it again, right? But The simple fact is, having someone who has been through your experience, or someone who is like, let's say, a personal coach or whatnot, who kind of understands what you're trying to do, is very important, because they can basically, for one, you're blinded by the love of the game, right? So sometimes it can be hard to see where you're going wrong. It can be hard to see what's happening here or there, but someone who is more like doing it for you, right, and is more like laser, he has a clearer view, he has more clarity on the situation, the environment, and the things around you, right, can offer you the right guidance, right, the right feedback of what you need, right? So for example, I can be a mentor, for instance, right? I'm doing videos on giving you advice and things like that. These are things like, okay, you take things from my experiences, you take some of my advice, and you're like, okay, I understand what he's saying, how does it apply to my situation? Whereas if let's say if I wasn't making these videos, you're not going to have any insight, or you're not going to think about it yourself, right? Maybe you'll learn from experience, right? Maybe you kind of understood it a bit, but you never put it together. But now you've listened to the video, now you're like, okay, I can put 2 and 2 together quicker. Now I'm able to like do this and do that, right? So that's the importance of a right mentor, right? And like I said before, right, feedback is very important, right? So someone who can pay close feedback to you, particularly like to your training sessions or your games or things like that. So for example, let's say if your dad was taking you to your soccer games and whatnot, if he's giving you feedback like, yo, you didn't do this enough, or I noticed this, I noticed that, that's very important, because you may not notice it, or maybe you noticed it, but you didn't take it, like it was the back of your mind, you didn't take it too serious. Like, but now that someone has said it, it comes to the front of your mind, and now you're like, okay, fine, I can actually do this and that to improve this, or now I can be more aware of this. I avoid making those sort of mistakes. That sort of frequent and structured feedback is very important for you to take your game to the next level, right? And in my opinion, having a personal coach is the best way to do that, right? But like not everyone can afford a personal coach who can coach you all day, like as regular as possible, right? But again, if you can have someone or something who's like just watching you or watching your games or training session, very important to take your game to the next level so you can go pro. Okay, so now also things like learning from experience, right? So again, I said this before, right? So learn from your past experiences, right? Don't just, after a game, if you can just go back and like say, okay, what were some things I felt like I did well in this game? Okay, I feel like I made some really nice key passes to some teammates. Maybe I even got an assist or a goal, but what were some things that I did badly? I lost the ball a few times, or I don't think I won back any balls. I or I didn't defend. And the hardest thing is kind of criticizing what you did wrong, right? Because you can, if you're criticizing what you did wrong, you can either be too vague, or you feel like you didn't do anything wrong, right? Because you look at it from your perspective. But like, you can even ask your teammates or coach that played you, like, what do you think I did wrong? Like, what do you think I can work on? Like, yeah, I don't think you made enough shots on goal. I don't think you were really helping your team win the ball back enough. I'm saying things of that. Like, just hear what they're saying, so you can say, okay, you can write it down, say, okay, I didn't do this enough. Until you're getting enough positive feedback from different people every time you ask them. Like, that's how you should be working, right? So it doesn't have to be from a personal coach. It can just be from your teammates and coaches, right? But like, what do you think I did, blah, 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 and just get that, learn from that experience type thing. And then, like, and just because you have a bad game, let's say there's a lot of negative comments and whatnot, just because you have a bad game doesn't mean you can't bounce back from it, right? It's very important. Like, a lot of players have their head down when they make a lot of mistakes in the game, which is fair, right? Like, even I used to be like that. So like, I was like just negative, I was just angry. It ruined my whole day, but it doesn't have to ruin your whole day, man. Just understand there's highs and lows in people's careers. Even professional footballers go through highs and lows, right? So when you understand that, how do I bounce back from this low period I'm experiencing, and then you apply yourself in the next game, you're less likely to have low periods and more high periods, right? Again, another thing too is with mentors is, they can connect you with the right people and expose you to different people, right? So for example, right, if let's say you had a personal coach, for example, that trained with you and so what like has helped you improve a lot, right? That personal coach probably has connections to different teams, coaches and whatnot. He's easily going to be able to put you in a team. Do you know what I'm saying? And be like, yo, this player here, like, trust me, he's my boy. You know, I train him personally. Let him enter your team. He's gonna play well for you. Trust me. You know, that coach does not need to necessarily make you try out. Even if he makes you try out, you know, you're probably still gonna get into the team because he has a fellow coach who has vouched for you, right? So he trusts that guy's judgment, right? Because he's a fellow coach, right? And that's not a coach that vouches for you is the big thing, right? So again, that's why coaches are very important, right? The personal coach you're training with could even know a scout. I'm like, yo, are you able to get, like, this guy's very good? Are you able to get him to different opportunities and whatnot? You know, are you able to get him here? Are you able to get him there? You know, he has that, like, because you're like, let's be honest, you're trying to go pro, you're probably between the ages 13 to maybe even 21, right? And the reality is, now you can be much older, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, right, if you're watching this video, you're probably between the ages 13 to 21, right? And generally speaking, you don't have enough influence and network, right? It's usually people older than you that have that networking power, because it takes time to build this relationship, 6 years, right? But you're young, right? And, you know, like, that's okay, right? So you have to be able to leverage other people's network, right? And that comes from having the right mentor, right? So for instance, for example, now, like, me nowadays, like, I haven't tried out, like, I still try out for teams, right? But nowadays, when I try out for teams, it's like I already have one leg inside the team, because I have people who vouch for me and like, yo, this guy is good, like, can he come try out, can he come do this, and the coach already kind of just like puts me in the team mentally, or like says, or keeps an eye on me more. And obviously, it's easier for me to impress when it's watching me particularly, you know. And that's the whole point, right? So networking and exposure is very important for you to take that next step going pro, you know. And most importantly, man, having the right mentor can also help you with that emotional and psychological support, right? The reality is, you know, is like your mental health can deteriorate, like, can decrease easily when you're playing pro, right? So, you know, there's a lot of like psychological support you'll probably need. I remember like a period when I was younger where I just felt like depressed, I was sad, you know, I was just like, I don't know if I can do it, I don't know if I can make it, because I'm just making too many mistakes, or, you know, like, I'm not able to get into any team, and it's just like, I don't know if I can make it, man, because if I can't get into a simple team, then how am I supposed to go pro? Things like that. It's just, there's a lot of like support like you need emotionally and psychologically, right? And you can't just get it from anyone, right? For example, if your parents are like involved, they may just be like, it's okay, whatever. But if they don't watch your games, right, and they're just speaking out of their ass, then how do they know it's okay? They don't know. They're just trying to comfort you. You actually need someone who kind of like understands your game and says, okay, it's okay, right? But, you know, let's work on this, right? Or you should work on this, so that, you know, you're not constantly experiencing the same thing, if that makes sense, right? So that's the whole point, right? Which is why a right mentor is very important for you. All right, so last point, guys, number 4, building a champion's mindset. All right, the fact of the matter is, I've given you all the harsh truths about going pro, right? But the most important truth is, you know, you need to have that mindset, man. You know, you've seen people like Ronaldo, right? Like, let's compare Ronaldo and Balotelli, for instance, right? Balotelli had all the talents, but the mindset wasn't there. He wasn't training as hard as Ronaldo. He wasn't training enough to like develop that discipline of like, okay, I'm setting targets for myself during the game. I'm not going to faff around, whatever. You know, you've seen some of his videos. If you haven't searched it, you see some stupid shit he's done. You know, just making, like, you can tell he's really good, man, but he just makes some arrogant passes or whatever, and it's just like, you didn't need to do that. You know, like, it's stupid, right? Whereas Ronaldo had the talent, but also had that dedication, that mindset, that discipline to be like, yes, you know, I'm going to do this no matter what. You know, I'm going to come out on top, right? And that's just the difference. Okay, so guys, you have to develop that resilience is what I'm trying to say, right? You have to be able to bounce back from setbacks. Like I mentioned, highs and lows in people's careers. You have to be able to bounce back from setbacks. Not everyone's going to have a good game. Not everyone's going to have the best game possible, you know, but you have to understand that, yo, you know, this is not my end. This is not the end of me, right? I'm going to come back stronger, all right? And you also have to, like, look like, yo, you know, like, if you're that champion's mindset, you have to say, like, oh, yo, am I growing, right? So, for example, you know, if you had that, like, winner's mindset or whatnot, you're like, okay, within the last 5 games, have I been, like, improving? Like, is there like, okay, is there an increase in my stats, or like, is there an increase in, like, because not everything's about stats, let's be honest, but is there an increase in, like, okay, my influence in the game? you know, like things like that, you know, that this is the real champions mindset. So that just everything's like you just have that growth mindset is what I'm trying to say. You're just growing mentally and physically with your skills and whatnot, you know. So guys, that's very important, you know. And nowadays, guys, you know, it's also hard to stay focused, you know. That's winner's mindset. It's very important to stay focused, and like throughout the game you're just like conquering every obstacle that comes your way, right? So, you know, you're gonna have challenges that are outside your control. Let's say it's your whole team that even plays bad, right? It's not just you, right? How do you elevate yourself from, like, how do you be the guy that like is the light to your team? You know, how's like, okay, if your whole team's playing bad, are you just gonna sink into their sorrows, you know, the whole team's sorrows, everyone's just like, we're not playing well, blah 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 blah, or are you going to be the one guy who's able to stand out so your teammates can follow your example? You know, that's the difference. But are you able to stay composed under pressure? Are you able to deliver in games? You know, are you also disciplined, you know, with your work ethic, you know, outside of the pitch, you know, or the little things I was telling you to do outside of the field as well, like social media, networking, you know, finding a mentor. These are things that require discipline and mindset of a champion, you know, where you're like, okay, you know, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done, so that my game is constantly elevating off the field. Right? You're going to obviously be training on the field and playing games on the field and whatnot. That's, everyone knows how to do that. You know, you can always get to that. But what the other discipline to be able to grow off that field as well? You know, are you recovering properly? Are you sleeping properly? Are you eating properly? You know, just not just eating like trash. Are you doing the right things? Is the football in your mind 24/7? If you really love the game, football should be on your mind 24/7, which means you should be doing everything you need to do 24/7. You can't be slacking. You cannot be slacking, guys, because people want what you want. So I understand how you're resting, like thinking like, if you're resting to recover your body, that's different. But I'm saying, like, if you're just wasting time, you know, I understand how you can just do that when you understand that people want what you want, and like you, like, honestly, it's beyond me, man. Like, even if you're 13, like, they're literally 13-year-olds in academies right now who are closer to going pro than you right now, and you're still wasting time watching TV or not even practicing properly or doing whatever. Like, how do you expect to go anywhere, right? So that's the reality. Okay, and lastly, are you able to handle that criticism or feedback, right? Because some guys are going to criticize you, some guys are going to say you're trash. You know, what are you going to do? You know, a champion's mindset is going to be like, yeah, okay, you think I'm trash? All right, watch this. You know, you train harder and you deliver a game. So you let your actions speak for themselves. You don't need to say, oh, I'm not trash, I'm not whatever, I'm better than you, blah, blah. You need to talk. Don't talk. Show it in your actions. If you're saying you're trash and you're scoring hat-tricks again, like, bro, he's spitting out of his ass. Okay, I'm trash. Okay, if that's what you call trash, then that's a compliment. Thank you. You know, like, you don't need to prove anything to him, right? Because your actions speak louder than words, right? So, you know, be able to handle criticism and feedback, you know, constructively, and use it to like fuel your improvement, right? Like fuel like your motivation. You're motivated. You're like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. That's a real champion's mindset. And you're not just like talking out of your head and like, oh, you know, you're actually showing it through your actions. You're working hard, right? The proof is in the pudding because you're actually working, right? And that's the reality of a champion's mindset, guys. You know, so guys, if you like this video so far, like, comment, subscribe. You know, if you want more videos like this, put it down in the comment section or suggest any videos you like me to do, you know, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.